Hello everyone and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Mike Wozniak, the CTO and one of the founders here of SoftwareKey.com. Also helping me today is with the presentation is Abram Pusada of the software development team. Today's focus is to provide an overview and demonstration of the Protection Plus 5 software development kit. I'd love to show you the powerful capabilities of the system to help you increase revenue and maintain control of your software. The software key system for independent software vendors has been around for 25 years with over 6,000 customers around the world. For those of you who are new to the software key system, I'll give a very brief overview of the architecture. I'll also show the SDK additions and the included components. There are many approaches to licensing your software, so I'll briefly just describe what's possible. We use a very robust license file format which stores the status of your application's license, so we'll discuss the file types, the contents, and the encryption used to protect it, as well as how both connected and disconnected users can be activated. I will demonstrate electronic license activation and management both for online automated approaches as well as manual approaches. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website if you would like to review it again or share it with your colleagues. Your microphones are muted. However, in the GoToWebinar control panel applet, you should see a question section. Feel free to type your question even during the presentation and choose to send it. Our staff will be happy to answer your questions along the way. There are two main components of the licensing system. Instant Protection Plus and the Protection Plus Software Development Kit, or SDK, are the licensing clients. This is typically where you start. The SDK, or our licensing client, runs inside of your software, which are distributed to customers. Solo Server is our flagship online license management system, which automates the software activation process while maintaining control through electronic license management. There's even an optional e-commerce module or hooks into other e-commerce platforms. Although both of these components can be used separately, they're designed to work great together. The Protection Plus licensing clients are available in several packages. If you're new to the software key system, we typically recommend trying our Instant Protection Plus 3 tool first. This uses a wizard approach for quick implementation with the commonly requested features. If you want to get started quickly with understanding the software key system, we have other recorded webinars that demonstrate the Instant Protection Plus 3 capabilities. If, on the other hand, you're looking for customized licensing, you have come to the right place. We have developed the Protection Plus 5 SDK for the most demanding advanced licensing implementations. We have separate libraries for .NET code and support multiple platforms there, native code on multiple platforms, mobile development, Java code, and through a partnership with National Instruments, even LabVIEW code. And we have some more exciting SDK libraries under development. Each package is licensed separately by Developer Workstation with quantity discounts when multiple package licenses are purchased together. This graphic shows an overview of the software key system. You start by installing the Protection Plus package in purple on your development workstation. The left side highlights the libraries included in your application source code and the capabilities that are used inside of those libraries. The right side indicates several resources that are used by your development team, including high-level how-to documentation, as well as detailed API function references, sample code with tutorials, and utilities like License Manager to manually activate customers. We love automating businesses, so at any time you can add Solo Server, the yellow part, to add sophisticated electronic license activation, management, and optional e-commerce. This will leverage the power of the internet to blast your business into high gear. While brainstorming licensing approaches for a blog post we wrote, we quickly realized that so much is possible, especially from our 25+ years of experience. We do have a separate introductory webinar that goes into detail on the approaches of licensing. The bottom line here is that our SDK lets you handle nearly any licensing requirement that you can dream up. Some brief examples: you can create trial versions of your software, activate individual computers without expiration, leverage many benefits of subscription licensing, use flexibility on controlling use of the software using the latest technology available. During this webinar, we will demonstrate several strengths of the Protection Plus 5 SDK, including user-defined license parameters and licensing features and modules. There are many ways to control and track usage consumption as well, and you can combine any or all of the above options. So how do we support all of these licensing approaches? The license file stores the license status on the protected computer. It is an XML document, very extensible, plenty of room for user-defined fields to describe the license. We use the RSA algorithm for encryption and digital signatures, verifying the integrity and the source of the license file, as well as utilizing other algorithms for security. There are two main types of license files with our SDK. A read-only file is sent one direction from Solo Server or the License Manager application to the protected software running on your customer's computer. In this case, two encryption keys in the RSA algorithm are used, one to write and one to read. When a read-only license file is used, the key to write the file is kept secret, only known by Solo Server or your staff. The user or application cannot easily change the contents, making it very secure. I like to use the analogy of parking at a hotel and using a valet parking service. Some people who have valuables protected in their glove box or in their trunk might limit access to the valet parking attendant by giving them the valet key so that they don't have access to these valuables. A writable license file is used for those necessary cases when your application needs to write some data into the license file. Perhaps you're running a trial version and you want to keep track of the last time the software is run, preventing them from backdating the clock to try to gain additional time. When your application needs to write to the file, it needs an RSA key to do so. In this case, the key must be in the code, which means that a determined hacker can extract it. Just like when you're parking at the hotel, giving the valet key to the parking attendant, but leaving the full access key hidden under the seat. It's not an ideal scenario because the parking attendant may stumble upon your key and gain full access to the car. When using a writable license file, we recommend that you always try to hide the encryption key values as much as possible. And also, we recommend using redundant copies of the license file, we call them license file aliases, to help prevent tampering. The Protection Plus 5 license file can be stored anywhere. It is a standard XML document. The file could be stored in the file system, in the Windows registry, even a database if your application already has a database being used. With most activation types, it uses a request and response mechanism containing XML. Our team has thought of nearly every possible way to activate software and support in the SDK. When the computer is online on the internet, you can perform a direct online activation. If the computer being activated is disconnected, however, but internet is nearby, you can use a thumb drive with that nearby computer along with an email client or web browser. If the machine happens to be very remote and only has telephone access available, you could download the license file from the licensing server, take it to the remote location, and exchange codes over the telephone to install and validate the license. It's also possible for IT departments to mass distribute licenses without activation. We call it a volume license, where no fingerprint is stored in the license file. You just simply need to copy the license file to enable the application, sorry. We're very happy to report that there's 100% feature parity with all activation models, which means that you can fully describe the license in all options with user-defined fields. Essentially, a complex license description is mirrored from Solo Server or our License Manager utility to the software. All predefined and user-defined fields are sent. During an activation request, the request file contains fingerprint data, which is sent from the client or from the machine to be activated to the licensing server. The response file is locked to this fingerprint data so that it can't be reused. Unlimited updates to license parameters can be made on the server and instantly refreshed by the client. This works on the same computer only, so it's not the same as an additional activation. Sometimes you may want to revoke a license after it's been activated. An example might be if the customer has asked for a refund yet continues to run the software. The license is automatically validated during a refresh. So let's get into a couple demonstrations. Before I do that, I'd like to point out that when you install the SDK, the manual has a full tutorial of the samples that I'm about to demonstrate, so you can go through these at your own pace and do the same basic things that I'm about to show you. There are also sections in the manual that describe concepts in licensing, as well as what kind of samples and tutorials are included, as well as common implementation steps for licensing, and finally a full API reference that shows all of the structure of the object model or our function reference, depending upon which package is being used. I also would like to show how you can generate the encryption key data, or the RSA keys that are used for the encryption and decryption. I'm logged into the Solo Server administration interface, and under the products menu I can show the encryption key data. So this is the data that you would take and you would paste it into your source code. So I'm jumping over here to Visual Studio where one of our samples is open, and this license configuration class is where you would paste in not only the encryption key data, but also this is where you would put in or configure the many behavioral parameters that can be adjusted to your liking, such as how often the license has to be validated. We recommend that you browse through this license configuration class and look at the samples, or sorry, look at the comments to see all the things that you can do. Once you have evaluated our sample applications with the included encryption key data for our test account, then you can replace this encryption key data with something that is unique to your customer account. So I also would like to point out the product catalog. Oops. The product catalog is a two-level hierarchy, a product and product option. When you're building out this catalog, you can describe the license at different levels. There's no limit to the number of products or the number of product options that you can have to configure the license. So I'm going to demonstrate two samples. The first one is our simple text editor. So this is basically like an application like the Windows Notepad that just reads a text file. All of the source code is included. And we have designed this application so that each of the menu options is configurable to be enabled or disabled with the license. When I launch the application, I see this splash screen that has an arbitrary delay so that the user can see the license being loaded. You can change or remove that functionality. This activation interface is coded in the source code, meaning that you have full customizability. This interface shows the overall license status. The license wasn't found, that it is unregistered and unlicensed, and activation is required. So you have to kind of envision this is the product that's on your customer's computer, and I'm also going to be demonstrating what the administrator would do to create the license, so we're going to be doing both roles here on this same computer. So I'm logged into the Solo Server test account. This test account, the way to access this is explained in the manual so that you can just simply run our samples and go through the tutorial. So I'm going to quickly add a test license. A test license is used for development testing. I simply choose what product I want and click the test license button. Now I receive a warning basically saying these are meant for development testing. That's not intended for you to ever give a test license to your customers because these licenses are deleted on the 1st of every month from our server. So just clicking that is all I needed to do to get the license. I'm going to go ahead and put in a name here. So I'm going to register this license to a particular user. I'm going to call it Webinar Test 1. So now I've registered this license to a user, and there are many predefined and user-defined parameters. For example, I have specified a rule that only one activation is allowed. Of course, I can change this at any time. So in a matter of a couple clicks, I can add a license, I can register a license. So how would I specify some custom user-defined parameters per license? There are 3 different options for this. The first included option is to use the user-defined fields. On here, you can change the labels to be more descriptive, to describe however you want to utilize these character, number, date, floating point fields. I'm going to go ahead and put in here a known value, that's just some test, and you'll see why later. The second included option is the custom data field. This is accessed by simply editing the license, and the field is here. This is a XML document to describe the features, modules, or any other license parameters that you'd like to do. There's room for lots of user-defined data. The third option is to work with us through our professional services to create a custom edit custom license parameters button. You can fully describe the license here. You can also have any custom business logic to say you can't have this feature without this feature. All of this would be customized based upon your requirements. And most of these implementations do not cost very much for us to implement. So I'm going to customize this license because remember, it's a Notepad application, so all of these are menu options that you're going to see when I run and activate the application, but I'm only going to activate the first 4 options. So now that the license is customized, basically all that has to happen is the customer needs these two pieces of information in order to activate. You can give that information to the customer over the phone. You can send them an email with that information in it. Again, I'm going to be functioning both as the administrator and the customer for the purposes of this demo. So I'm simply going to copy this license ID, go to the protected application. I'm going to choose to activate online. I'm going to paste in the license ID. I'm going to copy the activation password, and I'm going to choose to activate. At this point, the application communicates with Solo Server over the internet, and now the application is fully licensed with those 4 options enabled, and it's registered to that company that I specified here. If I come here and I view the menu, here are the first 4 items that are enabled. These items are disabled because I didn't enable them. If I come back to the administration interface and refresh the page, now the activations left has been decremented and this license has been consumed. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to modify the license. So I'm going to edit. I'm going to change the company name to Webinar Test 2. I'm going to select the license. I'm going to turn on the cut, copy, and paste. So again, as the administrator, I modified a couple aspects of the license. Now, as the customer, I can come here to refresh the license, and it basically will download a new license file. And when I look at the license, these additional menu options are updated, as well as the new registered username. So again, we're mirroring all of the fields, predefined and user-defined, from Solo Server into the license file that's available to the application. And if I come and look at the menu, now the cut, copy, and paste menu options are available. So, to give you an example of what another edit license parameters page could look like, one that's drastically different, I'm going to add a license for a different product in our catalog. When I click the Edit Custom License Parameters, things are a lot different. This was just a random screen that we had put together. And the way the system works is there's some fields here, and then the customer can choose modules this way. You'll notice I'm going to choose 1 quantity of our basic components, and I'm going to choose 2 quantity of our advanced components. And when I click Add, that business logic is coded in our script to map these 2 SKUs into this quantity of license parameters, something that's very specific to this other application. When I click Save and go back to view the license and edit it, I can now see that the custom data field I was referencing before now has the XML data with describing the license in a very complex manner. This is very powerful, with near limitless way to describe the attributes of the license, including features, modules, dates, or other parameters. And again, most of the fields that you see throughout Solo Server on the predefined and the user-defined fields will get sent down during activation and refresh. So now let's demonstrate how this works for a disconnected computer, one that does not have direct internet access. So I'm going to go to our SelfSign sample. When I launch the application, it is going to start as a 30-day trial. Okay? It starts as a 30-day trial, It's going to use writable license file so that we can keep track of when the customer, how often the application is run and when it was last run. Now, unlike the other sample that used a coded GUI for activation, this particular sample is using our plus Manage GUI library, which is an additional .NET library for your .NET, for the .NET programmers out there, to display the license status and perform activation with a lot less code. So if you want something quickly, this API or this additional library can help accelerate the development of your activation screen. Now I'm going to go back to our previous license. I'm going to change the registered username again. Just so you can see that information change. And I'm going to copy the license ID. So going back to the protected application, I'm going to choose the option to activate a license. But in this case, instead of using the direct, this computer's internet connection, I'm going to activate this computer from another nearby computer that has internet access. So again, I paste in my license ID and activation password. I click Next, which starts a wizard. So I can save this request file to a thumb drive, take that file, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save the request file here, which put the file on my desktop. Here it is. Now all I have to do is copy this file over to the computer that has internet access, double click on it. The activation was approved, and now here's the response. I can download this file. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Again, so here's the response file. On my desktop, was on my other monitor. And I can take this with the thumb drive back to the computer that's to be activated that is disconnected. I'm going to browse to that response file, go to my desktop, and now the disconnected computer is going to read that file and make sure it's valid. And you'll notice that the new registered user information has now been sent down during activation. So not only is the new registered user information mirrored down from Solo Server down to the protected application like a direct online activation, all properties are also brought down, including all of the user-defined fields. And of course, if I click on the managed license, I can now see that this license is valid. I can also choose to deactivate this workstation. So for purposes of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and choose the deactivate this workstation from this computer's internet connection. I could do it also from another computer's internet connection. I can also refresh the license, but I'm going to go ahead and do deactivate. It will communicate with Solo Server. Now it does show that the license is invalid in both places, as well as if I come back to the administration interface and view the activation history, I can also see that the status of this license is it's been deactivated. I can see when it was deactivated and everything about that activation and deactivation process. So most customers of ours use Solo Server for the electronic license management and activation capabilities. But for those people that don't want to use Solo Server, I would like to give a quick demonstration of our License Manager GUI application, which would be used in lieu of Solo Server. This License Manager application is supported on Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux. What I'm going to do first is double click on one of our license files that we just activated. I see a warning message when I run License Manager for the first time, basically reminding us that the License Manager is using our evaluation encryption envelope, which means it's what all of our samples are used for the RSA algorithm encryption. And it's important that before you release your software into production that you change the encryption envelope to one that matches your company rather than our generic test one. So now I can browse through License Manager all of the properties of the license, including the company information, which would be one of the predefined fields, as well as that user-defined field that I specified when we first set up that license. The user-defined string 1 was set to this value. So you can confirm that all of those fields were sent down during activation. So I'm going to quickly reset our little test application back to unactivated state. And now what I'm going to do is repeat the activation process using License Manager instead of Solo Server. So if I run the application, you'll notice it is going back to the evaluation period. Now, when I'm not using Solo Server, this license ID and password, we don't care what that is. So I just have to put some blank values in here. And I'm going to activate through another computer's internet connection. In this case, again, since I'm testing both sides of the activation process on this same computer, I'm just going to copy the activation request to my clipboard. It can be saved to a file, emailed, uploaded to a website like I had demonstrated before. But in the case of License Manager, I'm going to close my license file. I'm going to simply do process manual request. In this case, I'm going to paste in the request that came from the computer to be activated. I can go in and customize any of the license parameters I want. And now that's all that was needed in order to generate a response file. Again, I can either save it, email it back to the customer, or I'm just going to copy it to my clipboard. So again, this is License Manager, the development tool that would stay on your developer workstation. And then this is the protected application that would be running on your customer's computer. I'm running them both here. So in that case, I'm going to paste in the response from License Manager into the protected application. Click Next. It's been validated, and now that information was sent down that we put in License Manager. So we've demonstrated a couple ways for activating a desktop application. How would a web application activation process look? So, of course, we use our own technology inside of our own product line. So to activate Solo Server, the user would go through a very similar process that we did for the desktop application. They would enter in their license ID and activation password, and then they can either activate online or activate manually from another computer that's nearby that has internet access. And to show the status of the license, switching back to PowerPoint here, we could display a status of the license. It's valid. Again, this would be displayed in a web page. What type of license it is, any license parameters, dates, integer fields of what the license is good for and which features are enabled. So all of the custom license parameters, such as the counters, features, other license types, can be displayed in the web application status page. So this webinar may have solidified your understanding or given you some ideas on how the system works, or you may want some additional help. So how can I get some help with my licensing task? Our software key team works with customers in 3 ways. Maybe your management team or development team has a vision already for the licensing that you want to implement, and you want a low-cost tool. You want to take ownership and build everything themselves. The way you could do that is to sit down and study the Protection Plus 5 SDK samples, tutorials, documentation, and develop a customized implementation with very creative, utilizing your own development team's creativity. You can implement custom licensing business logic and user interface, either borrowing from some of our samples or building it from scratch. And of course, we're always here to answer any basic questions that you might have with the implementation. On the other hand, some customers want us to hold their hand throughout the process. So we offer both a do-it-with-you and a do-it-for-you approach. So perhaps you're unsure exactly how to get started. We can utilize our professional services to provide a more detailed guidance and best practices. And you can certainly learn from our 25 years of experience. Some of our work is done in-house, and we also have trusted partners who are equally experienced in licensing. We hope that you agree that the Protection Plus 5 software development kit is incredibly powerful. In many cases, it's limited only by the imagination of your development team. You can request free trials of Protection Plus and Solo Server on our homepage of softwarekey.com. And again, all samples demonstrated in this webinar are included in a trial with a tutorial in the manual. Of course, we are here to help if you have any questions. We are interested in any feedback that you have on Protection Plus, Instant Protection Plus, Solo Server, this webinar, or requests for future webinar topics that will help you understand and make better use of the software key systems. So feel free to contact us. I know that our staff has been busy answering questions throughout the webinar. Just wanted to see if there were any other questions that were pending that we can answer for you. Well, great. Seems like we've answered all of our questions. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any thoughts after this webinar, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks for attending.